Good afternoon, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a subject to you that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and that is compensatory behavior, with a special emphasis, as I frequently include in my videos. And the special emphasis is on overcompensation. Compensatory behavior with overcompensation. So, what is that? I want to start with my qualifications, and that is I have no official qualifications, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, and it is not medical advice by any means. But I do know a thing or two about psychology. I took psychology in school, and I have some experience with it. So in sales, I don't really need to go into too much detail, but I understand a little bit how people's brains work, how people are motivated, and sometimes what causes them to act certain ways. By compensatory behavior, I mean things that they emerge to compensate for either trauma or some other thing that isn't necessarily healthy, but not necessarily unhealthy either. It's something that may or may not even be known by the person. Usually not. So I'm going to make an example. There is something called overachieving, which sometimes can be compensatory. There are cultural norms, and I'm not going to necessarily call out a particular culture, but many times overachievement is encouraged and expected by young people, especially in certain families and certain homes. And when the pressure is unreasonable, when there's too many incentives or punishments attached to it, it creates what used to be called a complex. I don't know if they still use this word, but it's basically a disorder, some kind of dysfunction that revolves around a problem, some kind of trauma, where people like to, appease it, because if you don't, there's a feeling, some kind of persistent ambient feeling when the compensatory behavior is absent. It kind of pushes back against it psychologically. So it's kind of difficult to describe with plain English. That's kind of why they teach these classes, so that you have a bigger vocabulary with regard to these things and can communicate with more specificity, more accuracy. But anyway, I'm thinking of recent videos I've seen on YouTube where certain people may be extremely motivated in, say, dissertations or research, and they clearly have some kind of compensatory behavior going on that affects their ambition and their motivation to do things in general, probably, but especially their research and their energy levels. Kind of trying to be specific without naming anybody, but overachievement can be unhealthy. It can be problematic, and it's sad that some parents and some cultures view it as an objectively good thing all the time, across the board. You can never have too much of it, and the more the better. It's a competitive world, and you've heard the arguments, but the problem is when it becomes your only mode, it becomes unhealthy, and you lose sight of what's perhaps more important, which is some kind of quality of life while you're achieving things. And hopefully a point to it, right? And that's just the achievement itself, but it becomes that way for a lot of people, I think. So compensatory behaviors happen in response to a lot of things. Overachievement is just one example, but if you learn to recognize it, it becomes very helpful to self-analyze if you're into that kind of thing, or you can use it as a topic in counseling. If you have a counselor, a lot of people do that kind of stuff, but it seems like everybody's got some opportunity with being more comfortable in their own skin, and I like to see people be comfortable. I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm pretty comfortable with myself. I know who I am. I've got a strong identity, not trying to toot my own horn, but I don't feel like I have any personal hang-ups, big items that have gone unresolved or untreated. My traumas are more or less situated in the past. I'm trying to be honest about it, and I really think it's true. But this isn't true for everybody, unfortunately. People are sometimes not comfortable in their skin. They've got all kinds of difficulties. Some people can't even leave their house. They've got, seasonal affective disorder, agoraphobia. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. But many of these things are in response to something that is yet unidentified by that person. And they get stuck in the loop where, this isn't a deep dive into psychology, but I hope that people who find themselves competing in academic environments question themselves at some point, and the answer would need to be something valuable. Like, how to rephrase that? Why would you do anything if there wasn't something in it for you? Hopefully you're getting something out of it. And I feel like a lot of times we do things because we're told to do them and we're programmed from an early age to do them, but those aren't really valid reasons. At some point, it has to be something that helps you and or your family, which helps you also indirectly. Anyway, big subject, just barely scratched the surface, but I think there's so much opportunity in this area where people kind of need to understand themselves better, and there's a lot of ways to do that. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Have a great day.